God, we lean into your presence tonight. We thank you that you made women for a purpose and with purpose. From the very beginning of time, after you created Adam, there was a purpose and a destiny written for us. I thank you for that. I thank you for your foresight to see us, your love for us, your redemption for us. We thank you for your heart for us, God. I pray that you would bless the words tonight as we dive into Rosa Parks and who she was as a woman. And not just a woman, but for the time where she was an African-American woman who said, nah, we love you. We love your presence. We hope that everything we do honors you and lifts you up. We want our mark on this earth to be a lineage of yours. Everything we do is for you, God. We re-surrender ourselves tonight as we come into this room to have conversations with other influential women of this current culture. And we just love you. We pour out our love as an offering, and we thank you for this time that you've set aside for us to be here tonight. Bless it. Amen. In response to that prayer, I feel we're going to do this reading. You have a copy of it at your table. If you want to read along, you're more than welcome to. But as we're reading this, I would suggest read it for yourself again later. And just close your eyes as I read it tonight. And this would be like the voice of God speaking back to you tonight as we're getting ready to jump into our third meeting. I am the culmination of all your hopes and desires. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, who is and was and is to come. Before you knew me, you expressed your longing for me in hurtful ways. You were ever so vulnerable to the evil around you in the world. But now, my presence safely shields you, and folding you in my loving arms, I have lifted you out of darkness into my marvelous light. Though I have brought many pleasures into your life, not one of them is essential. Receive my blessings with open hands. Enjoy my good gifts, but do not cling to them. Turn your attention to the giver of all good things and rest in the knowledge that you are complete in me. The one thing you absolutely need is the one thing you can never lose: my presence with you.
Thank you, Stacy. Is this yours, Stacy?
Yes.
Are you guys liking Jen and Stace?
Yes.
Trying to set the tone. Pastor and worship leader, they both serve faithfully and just tirelessly, and I just appreciate them being here with us. So, who can remember? I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes, and then we'll go for the tables for the ladies who are here the first time. Just kind of how it goes. We have a little bit of fun. We have a little bit of inspiration about a woman of influence from history. This comes from a book by Eric Metaxas called 7 Women. We still have yet to go Hannah More, Susanna Wesley, and Mother Teresa, in that order. That's what's coming up down the pipeline. And these women are just fantastic. They're historical for a reason. And so, Angie, don't take my picture right now. I'm taking my water up and see how I look.
I'm waiting.
Okay, so I'm just playing. You can do whatever you do. But the reason that we have the round table discussion is because nobody wants to go to someone else's like recital. I don't know how else to say it, but I've just been going to ladies' meetings for a long time and listening to people talking. Here I am up here talking. But here's the thing. I'm only going to talk for a little bit. I'm going to give you a little tiny snapshot of the life of this lady tonight. And then you're going to spend time with each other, looking in each other's eyes and talking about it. And that'll be the place where that'll be the thing you think about later. That'll be what you remember. You'll remember somebody's story. Mm-hmm. And then we have a little time at the end where we'll pray. I can't believe how much we do in just a couple of hours here on every other Wednesday. So who remembers who we talked about the first time, if you were here?
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc, that's right. Any takeaways from her life? Because I want us to be accumulating traits and vulnerabilities and just impressions of their boldness and their lives. You're like, what can I glean from her life and take and spend in my own life moving forward? Did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, everything she did, she still did as a woman. She didn't try to be a man. She did it out of her own femininity.
Yeah.
And purposefully and respectfully.
Yeah, Joan of Arc, everything she did, she didn't try to be a man in doing it. She was successful because of her femininity as a woman. Did anybody else have a takeaway from that time?
For me, it was like just her tenacity. Like she was going to do what she knew she was called to do, regardless of the opposition.
Tenacity, regardless of opposition, she would go forward. For me, for Joan of Arc, it was that she had this uncanny ability to hear God. And she identified it as angelic and angelic voices, but everything that she heard, it was right. And people began to believe her, and that's why they followed her, all the way. And then she was not only hearing God, she was willing to lay her life down for what God called her to do. Okay, so let's put that in a little compartment in our heart, and then let's talk about the next lady we talked about. Do you remember who it was? Corrie ten Boom. See, the closer it is in remembrance, the more and the better that we remember. So, did you have any takeaways from Corrie ten Boom's life?
Thank God for bugs.
Thank God for bugs. Yeah, if you've ever heard the story, there were lice in the bed, and in the concentration camp, and her sister Betsy was just forever the optimist, and thanking God for the bugs. You know why? No one raped them, and no guards ever came into their barracks and violated them. Thank God for those bugs. What else?
Her power to forgive.
That's my takeaway too. Her power and ability to forgive, like God gave it to her. To forgive, she ends up face to face with soldiers from the concentration camp that her and her sister were in, and that her sister died in. And this was a soldier that was aggressive toward her sister. And she forgave him face to face. And I just thought of my own pettiness and things that I hold, and somebody said something about me, and then you just hate them forever. It's like, it's so small, and it's not the kingdom of God. Her ability to forgive. So, did anybody else have fun for Corrie? It's okay if you don't. So you just accumulate these things. We tuck away her boldness and her ability to have a skill. She was a crafted watchmaker, and she was good at being sneaky, and she was blessed by God along the way and saved like 800 Jews. And especially when you're looking at the news today and what's going on again in Israel, what God might do in us. What is he doing in Abby right now? Right. Abby's very modest, I'll tell you. She's very modest. She's not going to tell you the stories of people who are coming in with domestic violence and situations that she's seeing firsthand and dealing with. And her husband, Matt, they're not going to tell you about taking a truck over the lines in Ukraine and missing a bomb by this much, and they're still here. This is the safety and favor of God. If they had gone on a mission, if they hadn't had a flat tire that day, they would have been in the location that was bombed. You just never know. God is constantly protecting. He's constantly saving. And it might not be how we think it should be or look like what we think it should, but he's always busy taking care of us. So, Father, watch over this word to perform it and speak life to your ladies tonight. And just, if you can think about Rosa Parks for a minute, take a breath. Say her name under your breath. Rosa Parks. Okay. She's born and raised in the time of complete and utter racial tension is an easy way to say it, but prejudice and hatred, in the times that she grew up. In the 1940s, she had a father who was a mason, a stone mason, a bricklayer. He was able to work with rocks. He would have had a great career, but he was just negligent in his personality and who he was as a man. And when Rosa was a little kid, she picks cotton for a neighbor that had a cotton farm. And she didn't have any shoes, they didn't have any money. And if you got blisters, or if you've ever seen cotton in real life, it has a very prongy little thing that it comes up out of. And if you step on it or touch it, it'll cut you. And so if your feet started to get blisters or bleed, you had to pick cotton on your knees so that you wouldn't get blood on the cotton. And if your fingers ever were pricked and you got blood on the cotton, you would get caned and reprimanded. These are children this happened to. And it's amazing to me that someone would go through that. I was speaking with my mom about this topic, and I found out that my grandmother picked cotton in her days. She's been passed away for a long time now, but my mom lived at a time that she actually witnessed some of the things that we're going to talk about that that I don't know, maybe a couple of us have seen. You've been able to look at what history brought and how we've evolved as humans in a little thing called civil rights. And Rosa Parks would be called the mother of the freedom movement, or the mother of civil rights in her lifetime. And she would credit a lot of it to Martin Luther King, who was also her friend. Who's your friend? Her friend was Martin Luther King. It's just powerful, the influence. But they didn't realize what they were building and what they were doing. Maybe they did. I know there's things I get involved in and conversations I have, and I'm blown away later when someone will tell me how it hit their heart or how it impacted them. And I love that. I love that God would use something from our lives, something so simple as joining a club. In their case, the NAACP, National Advancement, right? National Association for Advancement of Colored People. That's what it is. It still means that today. So, Elaine, are you like giving a cheer for that? Yeah. Just stretching. Yes! Over time, Rosa's mom decides when she's little like that, I'm not going to live with a negligent husband. And she moved back with her parents. So be Rosa's grandparents. And this is where her life changes for the better. And she begins to have food. I remember she starts to have ham for dinner. And she's like, this is amazing, this food. And red-eye gravy, does anybody know what that is? You know what that is, Angie?
Yes,
Red-eye gravy, just food that they would have pumpkin pie, not pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie for dessert. And just, there was food. There's always food. And she was amazed at the goodness of it. And she learned this value from her grandfather. You got any grandparents in here? Yeah, there's a couple of us in here. The value of the grandfather, and this is what he taught her. I believe the Bible. I believe I'm made in the image of God. I believe you are. And he said, and I love God's people, but I'm not taking any guff from them either. And so here's what we're going to do. Y'all, when you go to sleep, sleep in your clothes. Because if anybody comes in here that's harsh against our family, any white man comes in here to try to harm us, I've got this gun right here by the door, and I might not be able to take everybody, and I might not last long, but I will die fighting for you. And so will you. And they were like, okay, she talked in her own biography. She would lay awake at night. She didn't want to miss her grandfather firing a shotgun, But it never happened. There was never any kind of an intrusion. But she grew up with that kind of a value system in her. I will love God's people, but I'm made in the image of God, and I belong to him. Some of our scriptures here in this place, God is within her. She will not fail. That rings true for every single one of these women of history. It also rings true for every single one of us sitting here right now, listening to this message in this room, on this corner, in this city. God is within us. We cannot fail. The only way we would fail is if we don't try, right? So we're going to keep going. There's another scripture that's about the word of the Lord and how powerful are the women who proclaim it. God has given us a message. God is speaking life to us. He's giving us his message, and look at the throng of women that are going to proclaim it. It's a powerful thing. We have to begin to realize who we are, and that the influence that we wield actually matters in our workplace, in our homes, with our little kids, with our grandkids. If you're an older woman, you have so much life to give. You're a sage now. Open the wisdom. Oh, they don't care what I think. They need to care. Shake them a little. It's okay. Make sure nobody's looking. Shake them a little. Give your wisdom. There's so much to be imparted. There's so much work to be done. So anyway, Rosa ends up with her grandmother, and she goes through this school, and all the children there are black children, and all the teachers are white. It was Miss White's school, and he wasn't even Miss White, but Rosa loved her, and this is why. Miss White saw her and identified that she was intelligent even above her peers, and she encouraged her. Read these books. They all had library cards, but they're in a different neighborhood. So Miss White would bring her these books and say, your library card works in the white library too. There's a lot more books. And she figured out how to do it. And Miss White would bring her books to read, and her education just began to grow. She ends up growing up in this tension, like I was saying. So the segregation looked like black people and white people did not drink out of the same fountains. If you can even fathom that. That's actually happened. It wasn't even 80 years ago. 80 some years ago, right? Okay, so it's the 40s now. I was in the 40s. 1955 is the time she sits on the bus, which we're going to talk about that in a second. But here we are, at this time later, and our friends couldn't drink out of the same water fountain, couldn't get on the same elevator. couldn't sit in the same vehicle, couldn't sit on the same bus. Even if you ate in a restaurant, you had to sit in a different part, in a different bathroom too. And the conditions of what the bathrooms look like. It's like a janitor supply closet that's never cleaned. Do you remember going in there at school, like accidentally, or you had to go get something from the janitor closet, and you're like, oh, what lives in here? It's terrible. And it's like the whole, and I went to a pretty prestigious school in Eureka. You know, it was pretty clean and cool. It was like a good place to be. And it was just a trash dump in the janitor closet. And I'm telling you, that's what the conditions look like. The drinking fountain didn't look like something you would want to drink out of. So what Rosa did, because she believed that she was made in the image of God and she loved God's people, and she was the apple of the Father's eye, so she would take the stairs every time. She didn't allow the prejudice of the day to get in her soul. That's right. And she carried herself in a way, you know, and you can see her, she's beautiful. I mean, this is her in her oldest age. She's beautiful and she's elegant. She shows up in a court appearance in a little black dress, and she's modest and she's tiny, you know, and she's holds herself in such a way that there's nothing you can say that's bad about her, you know, because I got ahead of myself in that a little bit. So she ends up, she'll take the stairs, she won't get on that elevator, and she marries this guy. I think his name's Raymond Parks. And he's amazing. He's 10 years older than her. He's a barber. And he's also a member of the NAACP. And he falls in love with her. He encourages her at 19, when they got married, to go back to school and get her diploma. She does it. Of course she does it. She does everything that she's supposed to do by the letter of the law. You know, in the days when women and black people were not allowed to vote, eventually there comes a time when it's granted to vote, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to, because there's going to be obstacle after obstacle thrown in your way by people that don't know how to love and that can't see you as a human. They can only see you by the color of your skin. And so for me, what I've become is I am vilely offended by racism. And I think it's a stench. And I know it is in the nostril of God. And I have people very close to me that I love that have different color skin. And I know this stuff still exists in the world. And when we get around the table, we're going to talk about it. And what has God ever put in our hearts to be influential in this world today, as he was with Miss Rosa Parks in her day? So she gets her diploma, but it doesn't help her in the workforce. She still can't get a job. She won't be hired. So she does serving jobs, and she ends up sewing. She's good at sewing. She becomes a seamstress, and a very good one. There's a time in her life where she ends up working for an Air Force base or some kind of military base, and she loved it there. You know why? Because President Roosevelt said, if you're willing to die for this country, you're going to live next to each other. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. If you're fighting next to in the trenches and willing to die, you will live next to in the barracks, and you'll be one. The trolleys back and forth on the base were integrated. The tables that they dined at were integrated. The barracks were integrated. No, I'm not saying there was never any problem with that. There were some problems by people that didn't understand the God-given right to be alive and to have civil rights in our country still yet. I can't explain the darkness from which that comes from other than the devil himself. You know, the hatred of the enemy toward us, made in the image of God, is the place that it comes from. We have to pray that down. How much time do we spend praying? Well, we think prayer is the last resort. Prayer is the first line of defense. Prayer is the place where we connect with God. We have to stop blowing that off like it doesn't matter. If we're not praying, no one is.
Amen.
So she marries this guy, Ryan Parks, barber, NAACP, gets her high school diploma. She ends up working on the base. She sees that integration is possible. And then she has to go home. When you go off of the base back into the world, all the buses are separate. And here's what black people had to do. You had to get on the bus at the front door and pay. And then get off the bus and go to the back door to come in. You can only sit in the back of the bus. I think I have a picture. Did I send you that? Just show some of that stuff if you want to. And the back of the bus is filled with all of the black people. And so it kind of went like this. As long as there wasn't any white passenger, the black people could sit there. But if any white person was in the row, you had to get out of it and go back. to the back. And so Rosa ran into this same guy that she's gonna have the big, huge historical event with 15 years earlier. And she gets on the bus and he says, you have to get back off and go in the back door. And she said, no, I'm already on the bus. And she's not, this isn't someone who is a rebellious, she even has a title on some of the things I looked up as rebellious. She's not like that. She is defending who she is. She's speaking, she has a voice to participate in culture, and she used it. She wasn't loud, she wasn't aggressive. She wasn't saying, well, that's ridiculous. Why do I have to get back off? She said, well, I'm already on, I'm already here. Can I just, nope, you have to get off. And he threw her off the bus, and she vowed to herself, I'll walk home before I'll ever get on a bus that this man drives again. And for 15 years, she didn't run into him. So fast forward, she's already seen a lot. She ends up joining this NAACP by the role of secretary. They asked her to be the secretary, and she was too shy to say no. So she ended up doing it. And then she starts seeing court cases. She starts to see things that, if I even told you some of the stuff I looked at, I might tell you, I don't know. So she finds this court case where there's 4 black young men, and they are on trial for raping 2 white women. And it doesn't say, the defense has to bring up that the 2 white women were prostitutes and received money for the act. But they're still found guilty, even at the end of it. And they're brutally just treated. You go to jail and you're charged with raping white women, and they're just savagely beaten. It's a horrible existence. Well, at the same time, there's a case going on with a gang rape situation. White men gang raping a black woman, and there's no charge. It's like, see, I'm a victim of rape. This hits me in my soul. You want justice for her. And so these kinds of things, they still go on. They still go on. It's like, where the black guys were in a brothel. Yes, they were. So were all the white guys that weren't charged. There has to be something that cries out in our hearts and says, I demand justice. I demand it. Everybody look at Marianne. Show me your shirt. It says, nah, Rosa Parks, 1955. What if we just started to say, no, I don't think I'm gonna let men participate in sports with my daughter. I think nah, we're not gonna do that. What if I don't allow you to take my child out of school and change their genitalia on this is my watch. Nah, I don't think I'm gonna settle for that. Nah. Oh, no, I don't think I'm gonna get on the side of Hamas and defend somebody that would bomb Israel. Nah. What if we just got a holy roar about us on the inside in a way that is bold and confident and still feminine, right? Does anybody feel me on this? So, Rosa Parks, 15 years later runs into this guy. She's tired, she gets on the bus, she doesn't even realize it's him. And she sits down. And then the next stop, a white man gets on. And they're in the white section, but there's her and 2 ladies and a gentleman. And they're all black. And a white man gets on and he needs a seat. And so the bus driver turns around and she's like, oh no. It's him, and they kind of have a stare off at each other. And he said, okay, I need all of you to get to the back. The conductor he had the authority to assign seats. And so he's like, I need you to move. And they all move except for Rosa. She scooted over by the window. She's like, there's plenty of seats. And she was, she said in her biography, I'm always accused of being tired. So I just set myself down, and there's a movie that we think is so funny too. It's Barbershop, or I know, Pray For Us. We think it's funny. Instead of the entertainer is like, oh, Rosa Parks did, but he's just, it's not true. She did sit down, and it wasn't because she was tired physically. She made that walk many times before, and she could do it again. She was tired of what was going on with the treatment, and she said, nah, no, I won't. That's actually what she said. He came over, and the conductor got in her face. People started to get off the bus. They're uncomfortable. The conductor said, are you going to move? And she said, no, I'm not. And he said, I'm going to have you arrested. And she said, you may do that. And he did. And they're all sitting still on the bus. Some people got off the bus, some stayed for curiosity. The officers come. One is nice and kind and humane, and one is horrible. And the nice one's name is Officer Day. I remember it just because it's like a sunny day. Someone kind to come, and he said, Miss Parks, why didn't you get off the bus? And she said, well, I'm already on the bus, and I did pay to ride it. And he said, okay, I understand, but I have to follow the law, and this is what the law is, so we have to take you in. And so they take her in. They don't give her any water. They don't give her a phone call. But they're not cruel to her. Nobody hurts her. So her family's looking for her, wondering where she is on this fateful day in 1955. She ends up being put into a cell with 2 other black ladies, and they give her some water, and they start talking about what happened there, because she's not the person you would think would be sitting in a jail cell at all. She looks like a diplomat or something. So she finally gets to make her phone call. She tells her husband, that she's here, but she's not harmed, and no one's laid a hand on her. She just has been arrested. And so at the NAACP meetings, they've been looking for someone who could be the poster person, the poster for people who need transportation, who are contributing members of society and have black skin. Who can it be? And they had another lady too, I can't remember her name, but she had a side thing, so they call her dirty or whatever. I mean, just anything. Politics haven't changed. They're still like this. So Rosa, she's like, I'm going to do it. I believe this is the timing of God. God's within me. I cannot fail. What has God brought here? We're his peculiar people. He's brought us out of darkness into light. What does he have for us to do? And so she goes on this court. They have a court date, and they don't even want to win. They don't expect to, but they're moving behind the scenes. Martin Luther King is involved now. Brilliant. He has so many good ideas. He's also a pastor and just, doing his thing at church. And at the NAACP meetings, they decide they're going to have a boycott. And man, it worked. So in order for it to work, we have to get the word out for everyone to not do it. See why it's ridiculous to boycott Disney? Because you can't get everyone. Right. If you could get everyone, it might work, okay? But it won't work because you can't get everyone. It's too big for you right now. But this was not too big. And they took the city. It was Montgomery, Alabama. And there were 18 black-owned and operated taxi services that said, on this day of her trial, we will pick up everybody of color for the price of bus fare. And we'll do it. And the buses are driving around empty. White people could afford cars more. I mean, obviously, if you keep every obstacle in the way of a black person to succeed, even voting. That's what I was going to say this a while ago. She had a thing where you had to take a competency test if you were black. That was offensive. Rosa Parks takes it, and they tell her she failed twice. So she copied her answers down on her 3rd time. And she said, if my answers are wrong, show me. And I will be voting in this election. And she did. She voted for the governor. It says who she voted for in the biography. I can't remember. She was determined. Most of us are like, I can't get my passport. Forget it. No, it didn't work out. Get the determination on the inside of us. You're still breathing. You're alive. You're alive for a reason. You're a woman of God. You're my friend. You're in this room. God has something for you. Get the tenacity that Rosa Parks had, the boldness, the determination to not stop. So after this, let me say it all again. I'm like, who's coming in here? All my boldness just shriveled down in 1 second. Like, who's, Angie, go high, go look. I got you. Anyway, but she ends up just overcoming so many obstacles. After this situation, they did change the laws. You could just come on the bus. It was still a bit segregated, but laws began to change then. Civil rights became a real thing, and people started to hear. There's a voice here. There's organization. There's power in it. And we all know Martin Luther King is, murdered. She ends up moving to Michigan, moves up north, and while she's there, she becomes a deaconess at her church. It's amazing. She's serving just like you all do, and had her part and her role there. She stayed a member of the NAACP, and she was able to have presidential meetings just her influence, and just by being bold enough to say, I am made in the image of God, and I will do what He calls me to do, and no, I'm going to go ahead and sit here, right? Okay, she ends up organizing a foundation that is helpful, just in civil rights movements. So 2 things she ended up initiating in Michigan with her life work, and I'm going to leave you guys to the tables and let you have your conversations, and then we'll come and pray in just a little bit. And I just pray that these conversations are rich and deep. I pray that we're vulnerable on purpose, that we want to be heard, and that we want our vulnerability to be seen, and that God will be glorified in our conversations. And we'll be back in about 45 minutes or so.